Sistra, a French rolling stock expert, drafted the TOR. To make sure that this was fair, nag-procure po kami ng rail expert. Barry Gardner ang pangalan. Sinek po namin ito, siguraduhin hindi ito pumapanig sa maski anong manufacturer na magiging fair po ito at marami yung may competitive bid po tayo. Pagkatapos nun, nung na-award na po itong kontata, nag-procure din po kami ng consultant si Ken McQueen. He is a design expert. Siya po ang nag-approve ng design. Wala po sa amin, maski si Engineer Manalo ay walang kapasidad na mag-approve ng rail, ng locomotive, ay ng LRV design. So another consultant was on board. Tapos po nun, nung minamanufacture na po ang tren, pinocure din po namin ang Seoul Metro. Ang purpose naman ito, sila pong magbabantay para siguraduhin na yung safety standards na nilagay sa terms of reference ay ginagawa ng Dalian. I think si Seoul Metro nandiyan pa rin dahil sila rin po eventually ang magsasabi sa DOTR na itong produkto ng CRRC ay compliant sa terms of reference. Yun po.
And then, you mentioned, Secretary Abaya, about Sumitomo. No? Just like to ask once and for all, nung it was replaced in 2012, am I correct? As the maintenance provider.
The contract of Sumitomo expired in 2010. It underwent, I think, 4 extensions from the 2 previous secretaries before me. Kasi generally, you want replacements, you want competitive bids. Ito po ay part ng BLT. So, nung dumating na po sa akin, I was appointed on 18 October of 2012. The expiration of the 4th extension of Sumitomo was the next day. And
pinabutan nyo na lang.
Opo, and dumating pa nga Sumitomo sa bago pa ho noon eh. I haven't assumed, I was orienting myself. Dumating din po sila, well, due with respect to them, ang sinasabi nila, ayaw na namin i-maintain yung MRT train ho ninyo. Luma, overcapacity, obsolete na ho yung mga signaling system ninyo, yung power system ninyo. And by the way...
So they were the ones who said that wanted out?
They were refusing.
Okay.
In fact, their offer was, payag kami, basta taasan nyo ang bayad sa amin. May increase, however, hindi ko gagarantihan ang tren dahil overcapacity kayo. So, it's overcapacity and obsolescence. So, bago ako nun, sabi ko, sinong matinong sekretary ang pipirma sa isang kontrata, hindi ka pa ganong nakaka-orient, paying more and without guarantees na ano mangyayari sa tren. So, wisdom and logic dictated then, ibid natin. So, ang nangyari ho nun, bagamat emergency ang nature, and procurement law allows emergency procurement na isa lang kausap. Pwede nga akong kausapin na lang ang isang entity at kami na lang mag-usap. But no, our procurement expert said, sir, for our protection, we invite at least 3. So doon po, inimbitahan din naman ulit ang Sumitomo. Kasama sila sa bidding. Do not required by law. Sumitomo participated, M-Rail, I think participated, and CBNT. All 3 were given documents. All 3 were allowed to give their offers or at least express their interest and whether. But at the end of the day, it ended up with PH stamps. They won the contract much lower than the contract of Sumitomo. And I see here, I'm glad to see Mr. Bakar. Because the entity that won was PH Stamps CBNT joint venture. Ang inimbitahan po talaga namin was CBNT. Kasi alam po namin, nagme-maintain na po siya sa LRTA. Right? Clearly, PH Stamps was new, but we invited CBNT kasi may track record. In fact, kung tingnan yung procurement documents mo namin, ang in-evaluate po namin for technical experience and financial was CBNT.
So they were part of the LRT 1 already?
Yeah, they were.
So meron na sila
They
track
had
record?
records in LRT 2 and LRT 1. So it was their records that got through. And I think it was the expertise of CBNP that, if you see, they had numbers as well that got them through.
Actually, thank you. I've been listening also to some of your statements, Secretary Abaya. The reason why you're here also is because it seems like a lot of the problems actually began when we changed our maintenance provider. At least that's the impression of many. Now, going back to the statement of Senator Drilon, of course, there are a lot of legalities that are tangled in all of these agreements, but technicalities should be set aside in favor of public service and how the public is actually perceiving the type of maintenance or service being provided by the MRT. Now, nakita naman natin na pagkatapos ng Sumitomo, itong ang PH Trams yung nanalo. Diba? Sabi ninyo, dahil nga ito'y kwalipikado naman, pumasa sa bidding. Ang pinagtataka ko lang, kasi dapat din natin ma-revisita ang Procurement Act natin, hindi ba parang sumagi sa isip ninyo na ang PH Trams, kasama nga dito, pero yung may track record talaga ay yung CBNT, di ba? Na sila yung dun sa LRT na nagme-maintain. Pero minority lang sila compared dito sa PH Trams. Ngayon, dun sa susunod naman, dito sa Busan, ganun din. Minority lang talaga, yung may track record, 4%, tapos yung mas malaki, yung mga experience agriculture, hindi naman talaga sa pagme-maintain ng tren. So nakikita natin, doon pa lang, dapat medyo naiisip na kayo, bakit pumapasok pa ito? Ngayon, Secretary Abaya, are you aware that PH Trams was incorporated just a few months before actually winning the bid? Alam ba ninyo yun na yung kumpanya na yan, maliit lang ang kapitalisasyon, parang 600,000, magkano nga yung kapitalisasyon? 625,000 pesos na binibigyan ninyo ng kontrata for more than 50 million a month. 2 months, ilang months pa lang na-incorporate, nanalo na ng kontrata. Hindi ba kayo nagtaka nun?
Well, nung nandun po ako, ma'am, I was new then. Hindi ko po alam yung mga facts pong yan. In fact, on my first day, Undersecretary Cathy, who's our Undersecretary, advised me early. Kasi ang sabi ko, dapat bantayan natin procurement. Sir, maintain the gap between the back and the hope, the head of procurement agent. Dapat, sir, hindi ka nakikialam, nakikiusyoso dito. Kasi ang eventual appeal ay papunta sa'yo. So I remember that from my first day till my last day, that there should be a gap between the back and the hope. So as any appeals or any influence coming from me wouldn't happen. So, nung time po hindi ko po alam. Ang inimbitahan po namin ay CBNP. Nandiyan po si Mr. Pacar. It was his track record in LRTA. It was his financial record that was evaluated. Whether he felt comfortable with PH Trams or any other entity, hindi na ho namin pwedeng pakilaman yun. Na idikta sa kanya, hindi ka pwede mag-partner. Yung paghahatian nila, hindi rin ho namin karapatan din po yun.
Sinasabi mo na pagpasok ninyo doon, buo na ang kanilang desisyon na kunin itong CBNP? PH Trams.
Hindi ko po alam. Nung nagkaroon po ng decision to, I know, at that time, nag-orient po ako, ma'am, sa DOTC. The last thing I would want is to how all these bidders are partnering themselves. I was orienting in air, in rail, in sea. That was my last concern.
So you would say that it was the last leadership before you that actually had all of these due diligence for PH Trams?
I wouldn't know, Your Honor, because when the decision to...
But you agreed. So even if you didn't know, you agreed to it? Did you approve this maintenance contract?
Yes, Your Honor, because it was signed and executed.
So even if you didn't know the particulars, you just approved it?
Because there was a presumption that the organization, that the bureaucracy was doing its job. Because imagine, ma'am, if I came there as a doubting Thomas, being careful that I won't sign anything, MRT3 would have stopped on October 19. No maintenance provider, Sumitomo, would have packed their bags titigil. That I couldn't explain to our people.
Yes, I understand your point that you don't want service to be interrupted. On the other hand, we should also call on their responsibility, the one before you. If, for example, okay, kasi, alam mo, Secretary Abaya, sundalo kayo eh. Inaako ninyo yung mga bagay na maaaring hindi naman sa inyo dapat talaga ito nahulog, no? Ang sinasabi ko lamang ay ito. Ang Sumitomo, paulit-ulit na lang na parang temporary extension yung ginawa sa kanila. Imbis na sinabi ng mas maaga pa, o mag-bid na tayo kasi maglalapse ng maintenance agreement. So yung huling liderato bago ikaw, in-extend lang ng in-extend temporarily ang Sumitomo. Tama ba o hindi?
Hindi po. Mabuting sundalo po, pero sa Panginoon po ako sumasagot. Hindi po kanina man.
Sige, so
Second, ma'am,
natin kung totoo
the
yan.
responsibility of procurement was with MRTC. Remember, the responsibility for procuring was with MRTC. May mga kasulatan yan na nagpasa-pasa sila hanggang umabot na po sa akin.
Hindi, pero yung MRTC, sinasabi nga sa kanila na by the time it was open for bidding, or when they were told that the bid was open, there was just a few months left. It was less than the required. I'm sorry? 10 days. So, obviously, yung 90 days ba na kailangan para, maglalapse na doon. So, ibig sabihin, yung nakaraang liderato bago ikaw, hindi sila binigyan ng go signal na, mag-bid na tayo ng maintenance contract. Kaya ura-urada na nung bandang uli, itong iilang buwan na incorporated pa lang, ang naging interesado na. Tama ba?
Nasa Kongreso po ako nun, ma'am. I
Okay,
wouldn't have known, ma'am.
Okay, so
If
exactly
you want to
what
find
you're
out,
saying,
then you could find out,
exactly
ma'am.
what you're saying now is this. You didn't really know and you just trusted the organization. You didn't want to come in as a doubting Thomas. Therefore, you just approved it on good faith.
It was the right thing to do for a public servant, ma'am. Because if I didn't do that, imagine
Okay,
the
so
black
now
government
answer
would
the
get.
question then. Answer the question that I'm asking you. Ang tinatanong ko sa inyo, sir, nung bago kayo pumasok, ang Sumitomo, paulit-ulit lang na temporary nire-renew ang kanilang maintenance service dahil walang naganap na bidding sa takdang oras para mapagpatuloy nila ang kanilang serbisyo. Tama ba?
Tama po.
Okay. At least yan ay nasa record na ngayon. Para hindi naman lahat ng kasalanan ay nasa iyo. Kasi makikita na natin na pagpasok mo doon, meron ng kalakalan na nangyari na hindi na na pagdating mo doon, syempre, ngarag ka pa dahil lahat ng mga inaasikaso mo, nakapatong na sa'yo. Syempre, kilala mo pa yung pinalitan mo. So siguro may tiwala ka, o sige, inaprubahan mo na yan. But for the record, PH Trams that actually won the contract was newly incorporated. And if you look at the contract or the incorporators, meron isang pangalan na paulit-ulit lumalabas. Pagkatapos itong PH Trams, yung susunod na pumalit, ano nga yun? APT Global ba? APT Global. Pagkatapos noon, pati itong Buri, itong lahat yan, may isang pangalan na lumulutang palagi. Nandito ba si Marlo de la Cruz? Wala. Okay, si Marlo de la Cruz, na isa sa mga incorporators dyan, umpisa pa lang sa PH Trams, napakagaling ba niya? Na talagang alam na, kamada niyang sistema, palaging siyang nananalo. Ngayon dito sa Buri, hindi siya kasama dito, hindi siya nakapangalan dito. Pero ang kapatid pa rin niya, ang kasama dito sa pagbili ng mga parts. Tama ba ito? Sa inyong legal na pagsusuri, nakita ba ninyo to? Ikaw, Attorney Batan.
I don't have the information po to answer that.
Buri.
No, ma'am.
Wala siya dito, ha?
Sino, ma'am?
Si Marlon de la Cruz, yung kanyang kapatid.
Wala po. Ang manager po namin ng procurement si Mr. Joey Phil Corpus.
Wait. So, it has to be dispelled beyond reasonable doubt na talagang wala ng kamay dito. Dahil merong mga iba at tatawagin natin sila para sabihin na hindi, nakikialam pa rin yan on the side. Regardless, sabihin natin wala sila dito sa Buri. Okay? Wala sila dyan. Kasama pa rin sila nga itong ang si Marlo de la Cruz, gusto kong makausap. Kasi ano bang expertise niya? Bakit nung lumipat na dito sa isa pang maintenance provider na PH Trust, kasama pa rin siya. Ngayon, hindi ba meron din time nung nandun ka, Secretary Abaya, na dinivide mo na yung kontrata ng maintenance sa 6 months, 6 months? Paki-explica lang bakit naging ganon kaikli. Kasi, syempre, pagka 6 months lang, wala ka namang, wala ka namang incentive na ganingan ng trabaho mo.
Ma'am, could I read my statement or you want me to answer the
So
question?
you have the statement, okay.
Yes.
Go ahead and read your statement, please.
And I could answer it later, ma'am. Good morning to all. Good morning, Senator Ron, Chairman, and Senator JV. I wrote the chairperson of this committee personally requesting for an earlier hearing, and I'm glad for this opportunity to be heard. I've always cooperated with the committee during my time as secretary and do so today as a private citizen. I've heard the chairperson reiterate often her foremost priority given to the safety of our people. We hold the same then and we hold the same now. I like to think we had a smooth turnover with the current DOTR, and our doors remain open should they have questions on projects procured during our time or ongoing implementation. I had deliberately decided to stay away from making public statements ever since stepping down from office, given the risk my words may be taken out of context or misquoted. And likewise, more importantly, is to allow the current administration to learn the ropes, oil its gears, and loosen up its joints, for I know the task at hand is not easy. Handling DOTR is difficult as it is, without the complications brought about by disinformation. Disinformation is disruptive to a department, and we know that. Thus, we are here to answer questions and set records straight so that people may run smoothly for the benefit of our people. Sec Art and I had a smooth and effective turnover, and I continue to pray for him and the department. The contract for the MRT-3 maintenance with Buri has been procured in accordance with Republic Act 9184 or the Procurement Law. Allegations of anomaly of wrongdoing by the previous administration relating to the said contract are without basis. At the time of its procurement, immediate action was required to address the deficiencies of the MRT-3 system. This is to ensure the safety of the riding public. The procurement of the maintenance service provider serves to remedy the MRT-3's condition in order to restore vital public service and the MRT-3 facility. Moreover, the procurement was undertaken to avoid danger and injury to life or property, and is necessary to prevent damage to or loss of life or property. Likewise, to preserve public infrastructure and restore vital public services. The said negotiated procurement under emergency case was unanimously approved by the GPPB. Further, the DOJ issued an opinion affirming the propriety of the mode of negotiated procurement of the projects. DOTC MRT-3 has likewise endeavored to protect the interests of the government during the negotiations for the contract, even going beyond the minimum requirements of the law to ensure that the government gets the best deal it can for the benefit of our people. And if I could cite Section 53.2 or negotiated procurement under the revised IRR of RA 9184, it does not require that the procuring entity invite a minimum number of prospective offers to negotiate with. Under the procurement rules, the procurement entity may opt to invite only one entity for negotiations. Though not required by law, the BAC invited 4 reputable firms and even allowed 3 other companies to participate in the negotiations when they expressed interest to participate in the negotiations. All interested offerers were treated on equal footing, information were given to all, and rules were uniformly applied. During its negotiations with the sole complying offerer, the joint venture of Busan, the negotiating team required that a Management and Facility Maintenance Services Agreement, or MFMSA, be executed between Busan and the rest of the JV members to ensure that the technical capacity of Busan will be the object of the contract, regardless of the equity sharing amongst the JV members. The contract requires Buri to meet certain key performance indicators, failing which it will get penalized and fined. In addition, under the procurement law, the DOTR may impose liquidated damages in case of delays. From January 2016, upon the commencement of the maintenance contract, until June 2016, when we turned over the agency, MRT3 closely monitored the performance of Buri. Our management did not hesitate to impose penalties if necessary pursuant to the contract. As we noted, the trains running during peak hours increased from, I think, 13, as stated by Buri, to around 18 or 19. As to the COA report, this is an implementation issue which the DOTR is in best position to address. In any case, if Buri has committed delays in its undertakings under the contract, the DOTR should impose liquidated damages and penalties as provided under the procurement law and the contract. Under procurement law, the compliance of one joint venture partner to the track record requirement is adequate compliance for eligibility. This was what happened to Buri, and likewise, if you want to go back to the joint venture of CBNT and PH Trams. This is section 23.1b of the revised IRR of RA 9184. And the submission of technical and financial eligibility documents by any of the joint venture partners constitutes compliance. The DOTC MRT3 required that a management and facility maintenance services agreement, or MFMSA, be executed between Busan and the rest of the JV members to ensure that the technical capacity of Busan will be the object of the contract. The MFMSA ensured that government interests will be protected throughout the life of the contract and that the services of presence of Busan, which is essential to the safe and reliable maintenance of the MRT system. It shall be guaranteed for the duration of the contract. Essentially, the MFMSA requires Busan to be in charge of management and the technical aspect of the contract. It also provides that technical experts must be deployed and that any changes to the experts must be approved by DOTR. But more importantly, and the public should know, that the contract provides that the members of the joint venture are all joint and severally liable to the procuring entity, regardless of equity in the joint venture. In essence, if Buri is at fault, any complainant can go after Busan itself solely, jointly, and severally. They will take it on even if the issue, they merely have 4%. When we bid out the CRRC LRV project, it was required that the supplier deliver LRVs that are fully compatible with the MRT3 system. The government will not accept or pay for any LRV that is not fully compatible. Nevertheless, we understand that the signaling is compatible and mere adjustments are ongoing. Note that the current signaling system is Bombardier. CRRC has engaged Bombardier for its signaling. There is no reason for incompatibility. Under the TOR, we require that the bidder deliver an LRV that is fully compatible with existing infrastructure and signaling system. In fact, the TOR is replete with the descriptive requirement, full compatibility, closing quotations. The current system is Bombardier, and it is the obligation of Dalian and Dalian alone to make its LRVs compliant. We understand that the supplier is currently fixing software interface issues and that eventually the trains will be compatible, and as presented earlier, hopefully by June of this year, next month. As we understand, the signaling system for the CRRC trains was delivered by Dalian in March 2017. In accordance with the contract, it is undergoing testing and commissioning before it can be used. If there is a delay, DOTR should impose liquidated damages against CRRC. It was reported in the media that trains have no wheels, no engines, no signaling, no depot, and no power. All of these are fake news. These trains have wheels, engines, signaling, depot, and power, and the trains can run. I personally rode on the train. I was there a couple of times. We didn't get media. There was no need to highlight. I just wanted to ensure that I put my life online to ensure that when the people ride this train, it will function safely. Note that CRRC has numerous projects around the world and is currently one of, if not the biggest, train manufacturer. In fact, I recall reading a PhilStar article written by a certain Iris Gonzalez. It named CRRC as the biggest train manufacturer. They are very interested to participate in the unsolicited rail development projects of DOTC. It makes mention here that they're the current provider of the MRT-3 trains. This was still written by Iris Gonzalez, October 8, 2016. And if I quote her here at the end, CRC's reputation as a world-class rail supplier capable of winning lucrative overseas contracts received a major boost when it bagged in 2014. I think this was first or second quarter of 2014, just right after our award. A $566 million deal to make 284 subway rail cars for the city of Boston, beating Canada's Bombardier. I know, ma'am, you're close to the city of Boston, and I'm sure the guys over there are also as diligent as us to ensure that they're not getting a fly-by-night train manufacturer.
But ironically, this contract was back after you already approved Dalian, correct? I mean, it's not like their track record presented to you when they came to you, right?
As mentioned a while ago, Director Deo showed that they supplied Tianjin.
That's right.
I did my homework last night, checked the internet. If you look at CNR, China North Rail, because the way they're organized, iba-iba din po ang manufacturing areas nila as big as China. If you look at it, CNR provided metros or LRVs to Iran in 2005, Saudi Arabia in 2010, to Hong Kong in 2008, Argentina in 2013, Brazil in 2012, another one in Hong Kong in 2011, and Thailand 2010 and 2013. So I think they're not fly-by-night, ma'am.
But this was a realization after you checked when, last night?
Yes, ma'am, but these are historical facts.
I understand, but then I mean, it was approved. When you approved it, you didn't have that information yet, right?
I wasn't part of the BAC, ma'am. I think the BAC was confident then that the Tianjin sample was good enough to procure. And now if you look at CRRC, when they eventually merged again in 2015, as I mentioned, they've supplied to Boston, they're supplying to Chicago, they're supplying to Los Angeles, and they're supplying to Philadelphia.
So they're actually supplying the trains.
Yes, ma'am.
There, in those places. Okay. Nung pumunta kami sa depot ninyo, I think that
can
was
I just
2015.
finish?
You're not done. Okay, go ahead.
Almost done now. Well, in addressing the problems faced by the MRT-3, I respectfully and humbly recommend that Congress should consider expediting the efforts to buy out MRTC. I heard you made a statement earlier. I fully agree with it. It has been a struggle. I'm sure our friends from MRTC are not really fond of me. But I really thought it was the way to go. The BLT is, if I could cite my project finance elective in law school, the first statement of our professor then, who was supposed to teach BOT, said that the model that we shouldn't follow, this was back in 2002, was the BLT agreement of MRT-3. That should not be replicated again, and we should fully proceed with the EBBO and the RBBO. Given that MRT-3 has been remiss in its duties under the BLT, and to fund the continuous improvement of the MRT system. Congress should focus its efforts to streamline procurement process. As you've seen, procurement, though really appreciated to ensure the public funds are preserved. However, it's really a balance between transparency in procurement and service to our people. I hope you senators will find a good balance between the two. Because from the delivery end, us from the agencies, marami na pong takot ngayon pumirma o mag-participate sa procurement. But again, you're expected to deliver from our people. Congress should focus its effort on streamline procurement and protect officials from frivolous suits that hamper the procurement and implementation of government projects. I agree with the rail agency idea, though I know it could be done in DOTR now, but eventually take government away from operations and develop its capacity to be a strong uncaptured regulator. Again, probably ma'am, you did hear a while ago the 5,000 kilometers. If you look at the TOR, ang sinasabi po doon, gawin sa China, but may exception po yung clause. Unless sabihin ng DOTR o ng MRT3, gawin natin sa Pilipinas. And tinanong po namin yan kay Ken McQueen. Saan ba natin dapat patakbuhin ang 5,000 kilometers? Ang sabi niya po, dyan niyo patakbuhin sa Pilipinas. Sub-zero po ang temperatures in Dalian. Dapat patakbuhin yan kung saan siya eventually mag-ooperate. So that was fully compliant, ma'am. Probably, ma'am, you were just misinformed that this would just have been a Dalian and dapat doon lang talaga. When clearly, logic shows it should be tested here dahil dito, ma'am, mag-ooperate. Going back to Sumitomo, with their debt, they've renewed it 4 times. And I've said a while ago, they had a lot of conditions when it was my first day in office, and I couldn't in conscience sign a more expensive contract without any warranties from them. So it was mere logic, gut feel, wisdom, and advice from my USEX on what was the right thing to do. I mentioned that CBNT should be looked at. We always emphasize PH stamps, but they were the original invitee to that contract. We were relying on their experience, their financial capability, and their delivery. And as seen a while ago, they were not house-show. They also delivered, and we just have to check if the data presented is indeed accurate. I assure you, ma'am, there is no invisible hand in DOTC. I would not have allowed it during my term. On your question, ma'am, of multidiscipline, I'll just walk you through. When Sumitomo ended, our clear goal was to get a long-term maintenance. This is a 3-year contract, because definitely you shouldn't be procuring a entity who would just stay for 6 months or a month. However, this is a long contract, so advise them, let's get a small contract to kumaga itatawid tayo dun sa 3 years. Thus, under emergency procurement, we procured CBNT and PH stamps, while we were working on a 3-year long-term maintenance. When that ended, and they were also extended, PAC decided, so why don't, seems like this is still a long way to go. We decided to go 1 year. That's when APT Global came in. We thought this would be a good measure, mas mahaba ng konti, mas may financial planning at procurement na papasok. While at that time, still trying to finish and start off a bid for the 3 years. Nagkataon lang po, there were failures. As admitted, there were 2 failures on the 3 years. Hanggang nag-expire na po yung APT Global. And if you could see the numbers, talagang bumabagsak po ang performance kasi they were already on month-to-month. Yung po ang biggest evil na pwedeng dapat iwasan kasi yung po hindi na maglalabas ng pera, sa kanilang parte naman, the next month pwede lang silang itigil. So it's probably the worst arrangement given the circumstance. So we wanted that stop immediately. We were seeing na in 3 years, mukhang hindi pa namin maibibid, nagkaroon ng 2 failures, hindi pa nandyan yung loob. Napilitan kaming to go multi-component. Why did we go that way? Kasi gusto namin putulin yung month-to-month. Dahil nakikita nyo, bumabagsak na ho talaga yung train availability at dumadami po yung aberya. And if you look at the curves of MRT3, nag-perform ho yung multidiscipline. Kasi ang nangyari ho dyan, yung maintenance provider ng rail, itong gawin mo. Ang finances dyan, dapat maliit lang. So, kayang i-manage sila. Yung rolling stock, kayong gumawa nito. So, when we chopped it up, then they became capable of maintaining their component. So, if you would request the data from MRT3, you could see there was a pickup during that multi-component. And buti na lang, at dumating na po, that eventually we cut off the multi-component when Buri came in.